Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome guys once again for the trade modules, which is purely targeted for understanding the strategic trade and protectionism from Indian perspective. So, therefore, the module is on theory as well as empirics, because empirics or the empirical estimations are not possible unless we understand the theories or basically the experts' opinion in different time periods. So, it also attaches historical note on various aspects of trade, and we have now landed into the week number 4 and lecture number 17. So, in this lecture we are again stemming from the last lecture. It was on increasing returns to scale and its connection to international trade. As we already pointed out in the last lecture, that trade is not just confined with the assumptions of neoclassical theory. It is actually very much realistic with the production function, which exhibits increasing returns to scale, but which was actually constrained or actually compacted by the neoclassical economist. Based on this, we are now unfolding the discussion on another very important market in the present days called monopolistic competition and its connection with trade. So, in this lecture we will be covering various features of monopolistic competition and how this is responsible for qualitative trade or quantitative trade, but the strategies are certainly different. So, myself Dr. Pratap Mohanty, faculty member in the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, attached with the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Now, let me proceed to understand the background of the monopolistic competition and why Krugman is famous for. So, let us count down what are the important features or the assumption by which Krugman's model, which is based on monopolistic competition, we already took off in the last class. So, once again I am attaching with the emphasis by Krugman model on internal economy of scale. We also discuss external economy of scale. We will once again discuss in this session also. Besides that, we will talk about monopolistic competition, especially the products which are non-homogeneous in nature, and the other assumptions are like one factor of production, that is labor, largely emphasized, but also they relax with this one factor of production with other factors of production. Then identical preferences are assumed across countries, large number of goods produced with the same technology and full employment. So, these are the assumptions in the Krugman model, and some key assumptions are like internal and external benefits related to, basically the assumptions again related to economy of scale. They identified external as well as internal. External, they mean the economies or the minimization of average cost of production due to the increase in the size of the industry instead of firm. When we are sticking to firm, it is called internal economy of scale. So, at the industry level, to understand economies, some of the examples are like Silicon Valley. If you remember, in US where Silicon Valley at large refer to the software companies, and all software companies develop because of an huge agglomeration in those locations, and that too during that period. Similarly, Hollywood in US and in Bombay, for example, financial capital. Bombay is the financial capital, and because of many financial institutions are actually located there, and accordingly many economies are derived. That is largely due to external economies and due to the industry as a whole growing. Whereas, if you look at internal one, like it is specifically for a single company, maybe maybe GE Electricals, maybe particularly for Nokia, maybe Philips, or maybe ITC, or maybe Infosys. There, I mean it is the internal economies or the internal firm which are responsible, the firms which are responsible in minimizing their average cost of production. So, Krugman in short defined technology as, if demand for labor, it is given here, demand for labor L is explained with A plus beta B times or beta times Q. So, how much labor is demanded due to demand for quantity. So, it is positively higher the production, or higher the production, higher the demand for labor. So, it is positively related. Now, similarly so how much, if you express an indirect function, Q is a function of labor. So, labor, now the amount of labor required to produce the amount of quantity depends on beta B or A fixed coefficient, as well as the the coefficient attached with the variable. And so, and basically it is said, or it is assumed, or it is considered in this model that doubling the inputs result in more than doubling the outputs. So, largely we are referring to increasing returns to scale, or increasing internal economy of scale in Krugman's model. Now, so let us move on. We have already discussed, and these are largely understood from the microeconomics theory perspectives. Those I have already read, can easily understand very quickly. Now, in the long run market equilibrium of monopolistically competitive market, we know that monopolistically competitive market has so many features. Now, I will just show it here. I will mix both the diagram together and discuss the monopolistic behavior as well. Now, in monopolistic competition especially, it is an imperfect competitive market because of the differences in the product, and they are differentiate its product from the product of competitors, and each firm ignores the impact that change in its own price will have on the price of competitor set. Even though each firm faces competition, it behaves as if it were a monopolist. So, that is precisely the features. Now, come back to the diagram which we are trying to refer. Now, what we try to say in the long run market, so they could able to, since let this be the demand curve, this is the average of cost curve represent the supply curve or the supply function, and precisely price is determined in the market and due to the number of firms. So, when the number of firms increases, it is not referred to only single monopolistically competitive firm, rather we are also referring to number of firms here. So, number of firms increases, they could able to minimize their average cost of production, especially when trade increases. Because the market size increases, firm exploit more of the returns to scale, and therefore, average cost decreases. So, we are referring to a number of monopolized firms, and the firms now reduce number of firms increases, which resulted in increasing number of firms and reduction in average cost of production. Since it is the external factor, that is trade, minimizing the cost of production, so we are ended up with larger variety of products available at a smaller price. So, everybody are better off since the countries are identical and the products are amply available with different varieties. Due to that, average cost function due to trade actually reduces, and that also shift the equilibrium position resulting in price falls. So, average prices also falls, it creates further scope for production as well as higher demand. So, as we have already discussed this, now let us move on to understand certain other features of monopolistically competitive industry. So, what is really very interesting in monopolistic competitive market? It is expected from the industry that to sell more, the larger the total sales of the industry and higher the price charged by its rivals. So, what they do, so total sales increases, basically the competitive market is attached with lower prices and higher sales. To sell less, the larger the number of firms in the industry and higher its price. If higher its price, the sale decreases and the sale more if the reverse is true. So, that is quite common in monopolistically competitive market. Now, we can explain it with a mathematical notation. So, here is the equation. The equation states that how a single firm can able to sell maximum amount of its own subject to various factors. Now, factors are like total sales in the whole industry, given the fact that the Q stands for the quantity of the particular firm, and N stands for number of firms within the industry, and P stands for price charged by the first firm, and P star stands for the average prices charged by rest of the rest of the firms. So, it is obviously negative. So, the net effect, net price charged by the single first firm as against others is actually negatively attached with its total sales. Higher its net prices or net price, the first firm could able to sell little lesser, and then when the number of firms increases, since it is inversely related to each other. So, the individual share in the total market also falls. So, and beta is a constant coefficient representing responsiveness of its firm sales to its price. What extent of responsiveness the individual firm has. Now, based on this quantity, we can have different revenue and cost structures. Let us see how firms are actually strategizing in charging different prices. To make it easier further, let us assume all firms have identical demand functions and also cost functions. Now, if they have identical demand function, prices are expected to be same. So, given this term boils down to 0. So, it ends up with S times 1 upon n. So, since they are the identical firms. Now, here, so it is equal to 1 upon so it is basically S by n. So, number of total sales divided by number of firms within the industry. So, then what is the average cost given the fact that they have identical cost function and identical demand function? The average cost will be since average cost is equal to total cost divided by quantity. So, it has a components of fixed cost plus variable cost. So, fixed cost divided by quantity. So, let it be quantity. So, this is CQ by Q cancelled, which is equal to F upon Q plus small c, that is average variable cost. So, this is the n. So, what is it is equal to then F times. So, we have already seen it is Q is equal to S upon n. So, S upon n. So, it is equal to just the reverse n upon capital S plus small c. So, this is what is so far average cost is defined for a firm being attached with a monopolistic competitive market. Now, the number of firms and the average cost we have already defined just now. So, average cost is defined like this. So, therefore, the larger the number of firms, now what is understood? Larger the number of firms, when n increases in the industry, higher is the average cost for each firm, because the less each firm produces. Since the number of firm increases, average cost actually increases. Whereas, when the total quantity in the industry, they are actually producing higher quantity, not just by higher number of competitors, but their quantity is higher produced. So, it is inversely related to the average cost. So, their average cost actually falls. Okay. So, larger is the sales, this actually falls. So, which is very much realistic in monopolistically competitive market. Now, let us examine the number of firms and the price. The two components are also important. So, quantity, once again we have already defined this in the equation. Now, this quantity is defined, let us multiply S everywhere. So, S times B, and so S we are multiplying here. So, it boils down to be S B times P on this one. So, Q is equal to S upon N plus. Now, let us explain further by multiplying these to each of the component, decompose it correctly. So, these are the two further component. Now, putting it this equation differently. Now, Q is equal to A minus B P. A stands for this whole this S upon N plus S B P. So, this is the first component A, and this is the B stands for S B. So, B times P. So, what is S B all about? This is basically the total quantity produced in an industry as a whole times the prices, average price in the whole industry, and this is basically first component is all about the fixed component in the linear equation, which says that, which states that the quantity of the particular firm times its price, quantity of the total industry times the price charged by the individual firm, and times the per capita quantity in the industry. Basically, this is first related to the first individual individual firm, second related less to the others. Now, based on this we can define MR, marginal revenue. So, how to define marginal revenue? Marginal revenue in is nothing but the price, price in perfectly competitive market. Now, here we can define the marginal revenue just by multiplying multiplying P here, say or taking P this side and just exchanging P here, like the P is equal to Q minus A divided by B. So, now P into Q. So, this is basically equal to P into Q, and this will boil down to Q square B minus QA. So, that way you can define it. Now, again after taking faster derivative we will arrive into the marginal revenue. So, from that equation we can express it in terms of price. So, this is nothing but simply the price divided by the by P minus QB, Q upon B, which is also equal to its marginal cost. Okay. And in monopolistically competitive equilibrium. Now, so marginal revenue is equal to, now express B, express that B as B, we have already defined as B small b, which is equal to this. So, P is equal to small c plus Q upon B, Q by SB. Just by exchanging the equation we can find out this, we can arrive here. Now, so price, so Q, what is Q? S upon N divided by S by B. Just exchanging these notations we will arrive into this particular equation, which is largely attaches its relationship with marginal cost and marginal revenue or the prices in the market. So, how the price is determined? So, price is nothing but defined as C plus small c plus 1 upon n times B. So, what is the larger the number of firms, in the industry, lower is the price, since it is inversely related, n is inversely related to P. So, because the increase in the competition within the monopolistic setup. Okay. So, this is largely defining the relationship between N and P. So, when N increases, this decreases and vice versa, So, this inverse relationship is one of the important features of monopolistic competition. So, it is responsible for minimizing the average prices in the market. So, based on this, number of interpretation can further be made, like at some number of firms, the price that firm charge matches the average cost that firm pay. So, usually we know that monopolistically competitive prices are set at a very low level, but relatively higher than that of the competitive prices. This number of firms is the number at which each firm has 0 profits. So, price matches with its average cost. This number is the equilibrium number of firms, which we just discussed. Now, if the number of firms is actually greater than or less than n or n2, then in industry it is not in equilibrium. In the sense, the firms have an incentive to exit or enter in the industry. Basically, in the long run setups, we are emphasizing on the long run monopolistically competitive market, where the price is precisely equivalent to the average cost. And if it is if the profit earned by the marginal firms within the industry is positive or much higher, then outside will enter, and if they enter, they will actually try, I mean in the industry total number of quantity produced will be increasing, and therefore, since it is inversely related to price, the price falls, and those will be equated with the average cost to derive a normalized profit or normal profit. So, this is what when price is greater than average cost, when price is less than average cost is clearly defined. So, monopolistic competitive market, that too in the long run is more welfare attaching to these consumers, also very competitive. So, what we have discussed, because trade increases market size. So, trade is one sort of instrument which attaches to increasing competition, yet maintaining monopolistic competitive behavior. So, trade is predicted to decrease average cost, we have already discussed in an industry described by the monopolistic competition and explained by this equation. And this gives variety of goods to the consumer. So, consumer can buy different quantities with different qualities as well. It increases the welfare of the consumers. So, this is largely explained here. Now, this is number of firms, when number of firms is at N1, price stands at P1. When the number of firms increases, the total average cost of production decreases, because the total quantity in the industry is expected to be higher, and due to trade also a number of firms and the competitive behavior increases, the price falls. So, the equilibrium point shifted towards right, and given the demand pattern, we have already assumed that they have identical demand. So, due to another extent of competition in another country, the number of N2 is added now. So, which has actually resulted in fall in the prices. This can be explained in a simple demand and supply framework. Now, let us have we have already explained now the monopolistic competitive market and its connection with reduction in prices and making the market more competitive, and which has made higher consumption choices to the country is concerned, and now we are discussing how it is connected to the new trade theory. and to the old trade theory. So, old trade theory largely talks about two products, two industries. So, wool and coconut here. So, we are good at different things, and that is why we trade so far as old trade theory is are concerned. Whereas, in the new trade theory, which is largely based on economy of scale, which says that things can be cheaper in the scale of operation at large. So, by comparing big aircraft, luxurious cars, there are so many luxurious cars possible. Whereas, coconut varieties defining very differently because they are naturally defined. So, wool varieties differences are very less, whereas in luxurious car, aircraft, there are huge differences in the qualities of the cars also. So, we are similar in abilities, each of us speaks a good requiring large scale production. So, this is what the clear cut comparison between two set of theories. Now, based on this let us explain the two kind of theories in terms of inter industry versus intra industry trade. Though our next lecture is actually targeted or meant for explaining the clarity on the differences further between intra and inter industry trade. We have just seen that the classical or the old theories are based on inter industry arguments. So, they did not differentiate consumer behavior, they did not also attach economy of scale of production. Now, inter industry trade as per the earlier theories, so countries export goods of one product category and imports of goods of another completely variety another product category as in the Ricardian and also in the Hexer-Ohlin model. So, the basis of trade was comparative advantage due to difference in productivity in Ricardian model and the factor endowments or the factor availability or the resources availability within the country explained in the Hexer-Ohlin or HO model. So far as the new trade theories are concerned, is specifically emphasized in the writings of Krugman, Professor Krugman in 1969, which says that countries are actually different by their structure in terms of production function, and countries export and import products of the same variety or same products category. So, as explained in the Krugman model, this is the basis of trade. Here is internal economy of scale. Again, there are two types of economies, we should discuss it. We will also carry forward this one in the next class, but still let us have a understanding of this inter industry trade in a diagram. So, largely the trade in a world without increasing returns, I am saying repeatedly that it was without increasing returns. So, in a world without increasing returns to scale, there would be a simple exchange of one commodity exchange with another commodity, let it be cloth and food. So, you can mark the direction here. So, I mean the home country, let us assume capital abundant one, and the foreign country is capital labor abundant one. The foreign country is labor abundant, whereas the home country is capital abundant. So, based on this, one country exports completely of that range to the labor abundant country, and in return getting food which is of from the foreign countries with labor intensive techniques. Whereas, in the intra industry setups, the structure I explained from the beginning of my lecture that it is actually half the way filled up. Now, this extent look at home country capital abundant and foreign country again with labor abundancy. So, direction is now mixed here half the way, here this portion is actually mixed export as well as import. So, this portion is called intra industry trade, whereas only exporting and in return getting another variety in terms of food is called inter industry trade. Now, this is possible because of increasing returns, especially in the cloth sector, And if cloth is a monopolistically competitive industry, foreign in home and foreign will produce differentiated products. As a result, even if home is a net exporter of clothing or cloth goods, it will also import as well as export cloth, which is giving rising, which gives rise to the extent of intra-industry trade. Okay, I hope it is clearly understood. So, then what are the characteristics of intra-industry trade? This can further be explained in this box or in the table. Inter-industry versus intra-industry trade, the phrase are either or, either this good or that good. These are the terms used, whereas intra-industry trade both is the word used or and is the word used in the discussion. So, either exports, which I said, either exports or imports in a given sector of the economy, usually it is of monotonically defined one directional only. So, both imports and exports in a given sector of the economy. What is the source? This is basis comparative advantage, this is due to product differentiation. So, what are the characteristics are largely of intra-industry trade between industrialized countries, which is very commonly observed. We will also discuss this thing in the next class. So, fundamental problem is defining in an industry due to IIT intra-industry trade. So, for example, computers are defined as office machinery, then computers and pencil sharpeners are in the same industry. If computers are defined as office machinery, that means the industry is what? The computers are also required for the office, and pencils or pencil related pen stops, those are also required for the office. Therefore, those are considered as in the same industry. So, more broadly an industry is defined as the more trade appears to be intra-industry. More broadly an industry is defined, more trade appears to be if the industry is very broad, trade is defined to be more intra type, because many products are within the industry. And evidence suggests that trade is higher due to intra-industry setups, and countries are more opened off, and restrictions are less due to even foreign direct investment. This has caused higher intra-industry trade. So, there are largely various gains. It is observed that prices reduces, number of firms increases, competition becomes more fairer. So, consumer choices and welfare increases due to trade. So, we have already discussed, but still another extension should be discussed. MEL is discussed as an extension to the Krugman model. This is a bit bit advanced than that of Krugman. They talked about entry cost, and they also emphasize productivity in their module. So, where they also discuss barriers and productivity cutoffs in their trade module. So, these are all the content in this particular class. So, you might be expecting a question, what are the features of monopolistic competitive market and how it helps in minimizing average cost, and how trade is responsible or trade is actually emerged due to monopolistically competitive market. I hope it is understood. With this, let me expect you to be there in the next class to clarify further details of intra-industry trade. Thank you so much.